Hello and welcome to the 360 Speaker Series. I'm Curator of Education Anna Smith, and today I have the privilege of introducing artist Veronica Janssens. I've been waiting with great anticipation to see Veronica Janssens' installation in living color, as it were, poring over photographs and trying to imagine an in-person experience with her optically charged sculptures. I'm pleased to say that my guesswork fell far short of the dizzying physicality, perplexing visual effects, and just plain gorgeousness of these artworks. Janssens has stated that she is interested in situations of dazzlement, and I think that's an apt way to describe the feelings you're left with after a trip through the fog or an encounter with one of her space-bending aquariums. Janssens' work has been the subject of numerous solo exhibitions at institutions worldwide, which recently include the Municipal Museum of Contemporary Art Ghent, the Wellcome Collection London, the Contemporary Arts Center Cincinnati, San Severo Chapel Museum Napoli, and Unlimited at Art Basel 44. She has undertaken public projects in Belgium, France, Japan, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and the UK, and in 1999 she co-represented Belgium at the Venice Biennale with fellow artist Michel Francois. In conversation with Janssens today is Nasher curator Catherine Kraft. A respected curator, author, and lecturer, Kraft joined the Nasher in 2011 and most recently put together the critically acclaimed retrospective Melvin Edwards' 5 Decades. She is the author of the Nasher's forthcoming catalog on Veronica Janssens. I'm sure you're all looking forward to an enlightening conversation as much as I am, so please join me now in welcoming Veronica Janssens and Catherine Kraft.
Thank you so much, all of you, for coming today and for beginning to experience what will be a few months of this wonderful exhibition, the first solo exhibition by Veronica in the United States. And Veronica, thank you so much for coming and working with all of us in the last couple of weeks.
It's a pleasure, and I'm proud to exhibit at the Nasher Museum.
We're going to have a little conversation today to begin to introduce you to some aspects of her work. And as Anna said in her very nice introduction, when I very first started working on the essay for the catalog, I was a little nervous because I was reading these incredible descriptions, seeing these incredible images, and I was trying to imagine what it was actually like to stand, for example, in a fog-filled pavilion. And I came across this image. And it's a work by Veronica that she made for the 1997 Istanbul Biennial. And this image was distributed on flyers and postcards in the markets in Istanbul. And the text on it reads, "Phosphines, a microorganic exploration, a nomadic and visual proposal. If you close your eyes and put pressure on your eyeball with your fingers, colored, sparkling, geometric patterns appear in the eye." And this was tremendously helpful to me because I thought I can experience Veronica's work just sitting at my desk. And in fact, it was, and any of you can, if you've already encountered the lines to get into the pavilion, now you know a way to pass the time. But we're laughing about it, but it's actually a really incredible sort of physical phenomenon that is typical also of a lot of the interests in your work. Phosphines, the title of the work, is an actual physical phenomenon based on the fact that our bodies constantly absorb and emit light. And when that light is being absorbed and emitted within our eyes, we see that as little sparks of light created within. And
yes, it was this work resumed a lot of my different interests because it's this question of many of my work are more ephemeral. It's also a reflection of what could be art in a public space, and I like this idea that we can produce light, space, movement within oneself, which will condense all this preoccupation. And yes, we can with nothing, I can try to questioning those questions about what can we see, what are the limits of what we could see, and how can we push that limit, and even some things produced only by the brain.
There's another exhibition you did has a very beautiful title that I think really speaks to that.
Yes, it was an exhibition in 2000 in the Kunstverein Salzburg, and one of the work, it's the title of the exhibition. It is in the absence of light, it's possible to create the brightest image within oneself, and there is many meanings of that sentence, but it's really also similar as phosphine. It contains quite a lot of the main idea of my work.
I think to many people who've come across your work here in the United States associate it with light and color and the manipulation and perception of those sorts of phenomena. And I'm just showing another type of a work that's related to phosphine in that it's so simple. Could you talk about this?
Yes, I call them flash film because it's similar quick animation film. It's only produced by the Raman and the persistence image. When you look at these dots, you can start to see a rain of turquoise dots or other color, and it's a way to invite the visitor to produce a kind of so long as he wish experiment of color and movement.
These dots have been placed sometimes on the walls, but also in the pages of books. Yes. And as you stare at them, I think you see after images in the complementary color, but the color can also seem, the circles themselves can seem to start to sort of wobble or the color spreads.
Yes, this is the idea. And many of my work exist in a natural light version and with artificial light version. And I did sometimes some more complex or different way with artificial light. Phenomenon, even this kind of phenomenon I did. Maybe you have a picture about the last picture, with donuts. I can make a
right. These are.
And for example, this is the same mechanism by using after image, but it produces also movement. This is a kind of flickering of different color on this pattern, which looks like a donut. And then the visitor, after looking a moment the screen, he can move with his eyes on the space and see the complementary color, but also spiraling, moving. And it's a little bit like when you lance a stone on the water, it makes things like this, and you can do it on the space, in fact, produce this kind of effect. Your brain is able to do this. And yes, I try to this is not video, it's produced with light projector, which is programming. Then I spend some time to adjust the exact timing to produce this effect.
So it's a series of still images, but they go so quickly they seem to
with the dark between, yes, a kind of flickering in different colors. And after that kind of projection, we had different shape. And this is in white, and it's also a quite very high-speed frequency, and it's a white projection, but you see color patterns appear, and even volumes, and it's just by trying to program the right rhythm to give the possibility to experiment this kind of phenomenon. Which is produced a big part by the visitor, the viewer.
Well, I think one of the things that happens, in Martin here on the right, that it's a rear projection. So you also have this sort of a beam, or a sort of cone of light, and it's also amazing how once you start experiencing these kinds of works, you can also start seeing it on your own in the natural world. Because I was talking to somebody, this isn't quite natural, but even the beam of light from the projector, if the lights are really down, you can sort of see the image from the screen almost floating on the glass at the back of the projector. Another work that's related to this interest in color and perception is this. This is actually a video, though, isn't it?
This is a video.
Called Scrub.
It's called Scrub because it's made by scrubbing with the mouse, on the computer. That it's a successing of a rectangular pattern, different color, but it moves so quick that it's quite impossible to see an image. And it's really an experience of excess. And it works with the idea of the after image, but it's also a kind of big immersion, visual big immersion. And yes, the effect, in fact, my first observator, I try, and when I think it could be interest for the other, I try to put in a good condition to present and to share what I experiment myself. Then it's also depending the ability of each one of what he can see.
Well, and one of the things that's sort of incredible about Scrub, and again, it's you can't. There is a video online that shows just 20 seconds or so. I couldn't get embedded into the PowerPoint, but I also. It's a very intense thing to see because what actually happens in the video is just a dizzying succession of differently sized and colored squares, and they flicker by so quickly and unpredictably that your brain can't quite wrap itself around what you're actually seeing. And I was reading this is actually can be sort of almost painful or sort of difficult.
For some, yes. For some, it could be really painful. This is independent because I exhibit 4 versions of Scrub in the same space in New York, and people, the guards, say that it give this projection give them his brain on rest. Then it's a kind of frequency with the different Scrub together make a kind of a good frequency which makes the brain rest. But in another case, it's just exhausting because you can't see it.
I mean, it's. I mean, that's one thing I think with your work. I mean, it moves beyond kind of simple ideas about optical illusion or things like that. It's a really sort of physical but also psychological experience. And could you talk a little about your interest in these sort of border states? Or?
Yes, but it's there is. I try to push this limit of. It's in fact in psychology, but also visually. It's the idea of the brain in action. In fact, the way how the brain can anticipate, can provoke a different effect and. I don't want to control psychology effect because it's more a question of losing control.
Yeah. And this is also another type of work involving color, and I think there's also you have an exhibition on display in New York also at Bortolami Gallery that has a work similar to this in it. Is that?
Yes, it consists of 7 beams fixed on the wall, but oriented in the middle of the space, and the space is filled with haze, not with mist, but with light haze. Then it gives materiality to the light beam and create a kind of sculpture which is really in volume, but ungraspable. And I'm really interested by the fact that also. This factor, how experiment this ungraspability?
Ungraspable, yes, yeah. And I think that's one thing, it's a little misleading, photographs like this, because this isn't just a flat pattern. It actually
it's really
comes
deep
out into space.
Because yes, there's this question. I try to rendering fluid materiality, to give materiality to the fluid, in fact, and like air, like light. And,
is that the reason you began using mist or fog in your work to help give materiality to light?
Yes, yes. Also fog, but I did it before also just by the effect of the natural light. Then I explore with this question with different medium. But the moment the fog, yes, after a version of As the Corps Noir, which is a semi-sphere, which reflect the light and make a volume, a semi-sphere convex, then just you have the feeling, then you can touch it, but it didn't exist. And after I try with the haze to make sculpture also for the version in artificial light. Then it's all the time this game to experiment.
One of the opportunities we have here at the Nasher is this pavilion, blue, red, and yellow in our garden. How many of you have been able to go into it already? A fair number of you. That's great. Well, for those of you who haven't, when you step in, this is a building that the walls have been coated with the three primary colors, blue, red, and yellow. And when you go in, you enter a fog-filled space, and the light really takes on this materiality and color depending on where you're standing, how strong the light is, where it's coming from. And this is really an extraordinary experience. How does this feed into what you were just talking about, or how does it concern this materiality of light and of color?
Could you repeat your question?
Sure. Well, how does it? What effect do you think, or what effect does it have on viewers when you've talked to them about being in a space like this?
It depends of the viewers. I made the first maquette on my garden with tape and like this, and I experiment the effect of these three primary color in the mist. And yes, it was questioning the notion of space and how we can push this limit, how far we can push and to be loose, and also this experiment to experiment the color like inboundment way, and also to give this materiality to the light. It depends for the visitor. I think it's very strange first experience, very disorientated.
Yeah, it's interesting when you enter the space, and once the door closes and you realize how restricted, how little you can see, how instinctively you want to put your hand out to try to think you can try to extend your reach and what you can see.
Because when you are outside, you can have an idea of the dimension, but suddenly when you are inside, the limit you feel you can't.
The first time you experimented with this in an architectural space was at a museum in Antwerp.
Yes, it's a white. This is a white mist installation, and in fact, I was invited in Antwerp in a horrible postmodern museum, and the floor was white, the walls certainly, but it was really difficult for the sculpture, for example, to install a sculpture, and the architecture was horrible. And I have two rooms. One is bath with natural light, the second is just no light, but it's the first room, and I fill it half of the museum with that mist, and while people have. Then it dissolves totally this architecture, and we experiment this whiteness, in fact. I try to do it something, because since the beginning, in the beginning, I made a lot of work in situ, You know, I visit or I not visit, and I did do immediately an intervention. And this is kind of in situ proposal now.
It's in situ, but with a space that is very unsympathetic. I mean, and finding a way to make that.
To make,
And you've also talked about how you work with, and sometimes natural light situations versus enclosed or specially lit. This is a photograph from a fog installation at the Wellcome collection in London.
Yes, they open a year about the question of perception. The Wellcome Center is more concentrated about science.
Right.
And it was really interesting for me to make an exhibition in that context also. And in that context, they invite that I have to do something. And they really wish to have a colored mist installation. Then I should find solution because the building is not so clear. Then it's, for example, one case when I experiment in inside room, but in artificial light with fluo. And combination of natural light and fluo light.
Yeah, and in those types of environments, the light doesn't, is the experience pretty constant? I mean, the colors don't change so much as they do with
no,
the natural
it's more
light.
constant, yes, because the Nasher, it's really depending the place of the sun, if it's cloudy or not, you know, it's very, I really like to work with natural light because it's so live, you know.
And over the last 3 days, we've had a range of lights and weathers. When you first made the pavilion blue, red, and yellow, you made it for an exhibition in Berlin at the Neue Nationalgalerie, which has this incredible Mies van der Rohe building.
Yes, it is. It was a fantastic building. Then I have the idea, a little bit like here. I don't want to really block the architecture, but to share this experience of the transparency, the light, and to experiment the air. And and then on the terrace, I built the same pavilion which is here, which is recreated here. And then I proposed to experiment this architecture, inside wonderful architecture of Mies, by a different way. And there is, for example, there are bikes with engraved wheels. And well, when you bike, you experiment really the deepness of the air, of this transparency, but also you provoke some light ray cones with the bike, and it's really...
So someone seeing you also cycle by, you get these
light
light reflections
light reflection
off of this.
Right.
So bicycles, we
and the idea is to make a sculpture outside, which is not... which should not be an architecture. That's why the structure is inside the pavilion, in fact, because with this wonderful building, I don't want to try to make something like an architecture. And it's it's a sculptural way. And also there is the bike to experiment this. Also on my work invite to the movement. You know, there is no static place all the time. There is a dynamic movement, which is really important. To try to experiment all the possibility. And there are also mirrors.
Exactly. I was just about to say, you also, people who visited would be given these mirrors.
There were mirrors there, and then they really can fly inside the architecture. By regarding in the mirror, they really can fly inside and have a new perspective of the architecture.
And you've used mirrors in other projects as well.
Yes. This on the left side, it's part of 12 intervention I made in Utrecht. At that time, I asked to make an exhibition in the public space, and I was really interested what could be art in public space. And it's more a question how maybe how it could be infiltrate in the like the water under the walls and things like this. And yes, which is because it gives you a kind of big vertigo also by manipulating the architecture and to
Well, what we're seeing on the left, if it's sort of hard to see, this was done in a neo-Gothic cathedral, so it has these soaring arches and ceilings, and visitors were given mirrors to be able to sort of capture different details of that architecture. But if you've ever, for some reason, had to walk with a mirror,
Right.
it can be very unsettling in all senses of the word.
Yes.
And on the right, this was a similar project in Venice.
Yes, it was. In fact, the mirror were inspired by. We can see, in fact, the painting of Tintoretto from which is on the
Right,
ceiling.
it's a
of
fresco on the ceiling of this church.
By mirror, and I decided to put on the floor this big mirror circle, just like this on the floor, and it collapsed the ground and the ceiling, and also you have this effect of a dilatation of the painting, and also you move all the time. You can't really fix the image because you try to see the perspective, but also you have it's more clear than on the ceiling and a little bit delayed.
Well, we have a sort of version of this interest of yours at the Nasher, right in our entrance. This beam here, which is you've probably all walked past it already on your way into Nasher Hall or out into the garden. What is this this object, actually?
This is refer also to my passion of architecture, modern architecture. But it's also very usual, simple material, but deep, sombre black, shadows material. And by the simple gest to polish it, the light is coming, and it gives this kind of liquid mirroring effect. We reflect the ceiling of, but it's just to try to get the light from just rough steel material.
Yeah, and this is basically it's an I-beam. It's a common construction beam, and I had no idea that you could get an I-beam to that kind of a surface. Yeah. How did you know, or how did you get sort of the idea to treat
it's quite many things also. One of my last exhibition was calling serendipity. It's this opportunity when you found something to develop some interest, you can find it. And for example, this kind of example you can see on the highway. When the train passes on the railroad
tracks.
You have kind of same, not so well done, but you have this kind of effect.
Yes. Well, so fortunately there's nobody on the railroad tracks polishing them to that kind of shine. But it's wonderful to walk along this beam and to see, on the one hand, the reflection of the Renzo piano's roof, but also it's this effect almost like running water. It's this quicksilver.
It looks like a liquid, which makes us see a link with the aquarium I exhibit using liquid,
and also liquids in the aquariums.
Yes,
the sculptures. You'll see also in the entrance bay 4 sculptures called Aquariums. That this is one by the entrance bay, and this is simply, it's a glass cube, and it contains, this one is just paraffin oil and water.
Water and paraffin oil.
Exactly, yes, because the oil floats. But you get these incredible, it sounds very simple, but you get, for one thing, the mirroring effect where you see the architecture again inside, and also these beautiful refractions of light. We were also there yesterday afternoon, and it was casting a rainbow up onto the wall. And I have here, this is, I think, one of the first aquariums you made in 1991 or 2.
The aquarium are part of my experiment in vitrines, and I like vitrines because it's an aquarium, because it's kind of mini architecture, when I can experiment things which it's not possible to do in a bigger size, like, for example, blue, red, and yellow. And then, as I tell you, I try to make sculpture, but with different techniques. And this is, for example, it's an aquarium filled with a mix of water, alcohol, and just after I fill a little quantity of white oil, and it became a sphere floating.
So you this is a close-up of it, and here it is just floating inside the aquarium.
Yeah. And it's a kind of very fragile sculpture also. That's why I didn't exhibit here, because sometimes I have to add some alcohol or some water, because it depends the heat
over
or
time.
The density. But yes, it was the first proposal for inside an aquarium and with liquid.
And this sphere that floats inside, it also it acts as a sort of lens, or
yes, it exists one with a very transparent oil, which is a lens will reflect also what is outside.
It reflects your surroundings. Does it reverse them?
It
shows them upside down. No, and this is also another of the aquariums here at the Nasher, and you were also talking about how you need to be in motion to see. With the works with the mirrors and with the aquariums, you also really need to be in motion. With the aquariums,
absolutely.
You have
to. Those two aquariums I call cocktail sculpture, because the mixing of the
cocktail sculpture.
Yeah. And yes, it's also it needs that you move around, that you go to try to capture all the phenomena of the light refraction. Yes, it's way.
And just to say again, I mean, there are no mirrors.
No,
in
it's
this.
Totally transparent.
It's all glass,
but
and the way
it becomes like a prism, which is filled with transparent liquid. It becomes like a prism, in fact, and the effect of the light crossing inside the solid, not a solid, the liquid.
And because it's different, the oils and waters, they also absorb different kinds of light rays.
They have a different index of refraction. Then you can see the difference. Yeah. And this is more about also pictoriality. And yes, this is only filled with paraffin oil. Why paraffin oil? Because if I do in water, it will have condensation on the top. That's why just. But also, it's a very clear, material, more clear than the water.
Paraffin oil doesn't get cloudy, and what you've done. This is actually just a sheet of solid color. It's a sheet of paper, the yellow green.
In reality, it's a sheet of paper which is placed on the wood base. And then I install a transparent aquarium, which I fill with transparent oil. And then it depends when you are placed to have different perspective of this kind of monochrome.
No, and this is also especially one that when you see it from a distance, it's like it's sort of glowing from the top. It's really quite remarkable. And this one as well, in which this one seems to me to really catch the glass of the aquarium itself really plays a role because of the lines that go into the red, and the way the red picks up here in at the base of the aquarium.
In fact, it's very simple, but even it's simple, it's still interesting, because it's kind of beauty.
You mentioned another work. There's one more work that's not on view because it can't really be seen in the daylight. So you all have to come back by in the evenings to see this work on the right, in the entranceway of the Nasher. And On the left is just an example of similar types of works in a gallery in an interior setting. And could you describe what these what we're looking at?
It's quite a very simple intervention, but it's a kind of construction site lighting projector, which I place a dichroic filter, and when the lamp is in a way well oriented, not frontally but in oblique, we can get a range of different color, of complementary color, and it fades, and it's a little bit, there is no limit, it fades like this. It's a bit like the fog also, it fades if it's
and it really, yes, it drifts.
Yeah.
And it's from, so again, what you're saying is this is really a common type of light.
Yes.
It's not a special,
No.
and in fact, I think most of the things we're showing at the Nasher, you've sent us instructions, and we got them, like the light, I think may have come from Los Angeles, but they're not difficult, special, fancy materials.
No, it's quite easy for everything, and many of the work are ephemeral, but there is sometimes a technical sheet, and we can reproduce it. It's quite easy to reproduce if we wish. Yeah.
I wanted to begin slowly to wrap up, so we have time to take questions from the many people who have come here today. It's really an incredible crowd. The interest is fantastic. And I'm sure many of you, if you've already been in the pavilion, or if you go in the days to come, we'll see many. Many of us will go in with friends, and we'll be taking photographs of each other and going back and forth. But there is also another way to. But I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
Yes, it was different. The phenomenon of picture, it's new. It's quite new, because when I do it in 2001 in Berlin, nobody had a cell phone, and it was
exactly. Well, that's what I was.
But I like also that there are not too many people inside, and also to have the possibility to experiment it quite alone, to have the possibility to really taking time, because when you are in the mist installation like this, you have also this effect of deceleration, because you don't see, then you have to decelerate, and yes, and to give the time to. It's not. I don't want. It's not like just funny things, There is different level, and I want. I wish that the visitor have the possibility to experiment in the good condition.
Yes, and maybe leave the phone in the pocket sometimes.
This is up to him, up to them.
But we've used and we've seen a lot of photographs of these sorts of pavilions, usually with people in them. And I'm going to maybe leave us and open it to questions with a photo I took in there yesterday. Which looks like a sort of just a monochrome, but it's a really it's a very special experience being in there, and we're sitting in a darkened room describing it. But the best thing is to go out and give yourselves the time to experience all these wonderful works. And thank you again, Anne Veronica, for bringing all of this to us. Would you like to answer some questions if
there are, yes.
Yes, please.
When you were talking about the pieces on the wall with the projections, you mentioned frequency several times. That got me thinking about how I've heard before that music sounds good to us because it coincides with the rhythms. The different tones coincide with the rhythms in our brain fires neurons. So I guess my question is, when you are designing the frequencies on the computer program, do you think about rhythm? Or if not, how do you? design elements?
Basically, when I think you were talking about scrub, do you know when you're setting the frequency, like how fast it works, what kind of response it will
sometimes
provoke?
I made an exhibition in Musée d'Orsay, which was an immersive installation with a flickering of blue and red lightning in a totally white space. And for example, many times I work with a neurologist, in fact, because it depends also the photosensibility of the viewer. Particularly the adolescents are very sensible. Then we make some experiment together, and sometimes I make this kind of research. Yeah.
But is it also true that the people's reactions can be very individual? Sometimes, I think you've also said, sometimes people may not see the complementary colors or things like that.
It's really depending their ability to see, to experiment.
Are there other questions? Yes.
So, following up on the last question, again on frequency, when I think of frequency, I think of hertz. But when I see light, I think of wavelength. Is there a difference? Are we talking about hertz or wavelength? Well,
can you repeat the question, please? Can you repeat the question, please?
Following up on frequency. When I think of frequency, I think of hertz, measuring in hertz. But when I think of light, I think of wavelength. So how do you interpret frequency?
I think that when we're talking about frequency, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're talking about we're talking about frequency in terms of time.
Yes, it is.
In terms of how rapidly an image is changing,
exactly,
for example, not an electronic frequency.
So what kind of frequency are you talking about? Is it the wavelength? Is it the sound of the hertz, or is it something different?
It's about the rhythm. It's about the rhythm and what the rhythm produces on the brain. In fact, this is this kind of frequency, and some frequency can be really disturbing, and other can really give you peace. It can give you brain more peaceful, and also I use this kind of frequency to provoke some after effects.
Yes.
How did you decide the size of the box? Is there any significance to the size of the
I think it was. It's still quite like a sculpture, but it's a space. And for dismissed installation, I think we need to walk inside. Then there is a minimum of distance, and that's what the minimum of distance I suggest. And the first one you saw at Berlin was destroyed, and I decided to keep the same proportion to recreate it. Yes, because it's quite. When we are outside, you have a good perception of the volume, but inside it's enough to experiment the proposal.
Yes.
How did you decide to arrange the different colors in the box
For the box, I just work with the primary color. I don't know why the blue and the red are on both sides, but just like this. Also because the combination was interesting, from the yellow to the blue and the yellow to the red.
Because you've made other environments that are more eccentric or unusual combinations of colors.
Yes, I work with a large palette of colors. In fact,
Yes.
I was in the Pavilion together with other people, and I had several different kinds of experiences. One was the fog, variously illuminated. Second was my own body, my hand, my shoes, that I saw more or less. But the third was experience with other attendees, people with whom I came to near collisions, and which of these experiences did you intend for us the most? If I had been alone in this chamber, would my experience be closer to your expectation?
No.
If there were 50 of us, what did you intend for us?
You know, I made experimentation for myself, and as I tell before, when I think it could be interesting, I try to share. But after, I don't want to control really what's happened. Then, in fact, you're right. When there are people inside with you in the pavilion, you experiment the effect similar as the photography in the labo. You know, suddenly the image appears, and which is very interesting. And for example, it was a big challenge because at the Venice Biennale, I shared the pavilion with Michel François, who had to exhibit inside my white mist installation. It's a big challenge, and but it was really interesting because it's big size pictures and sculpture where we live reveal step by step at this effect that you described, that things appear slowly, which is also a kind of state before the photography, you know, ungraspable situation, which interests me a lot.
Yes.
Your perception and the way you see things is very fascinating and different. When you were little, did you see things in a mirror differently? Did this all happen as you grew up? Or were your eyes opened by a particular mentor that taught you how to see things differently?
No, I didn't go so much in school when I was a child, and I have a lot of time to experiment, to live, and to see what's happened. And I have a good teacher, which was really open in experimental art, and then we can do what we wanted in the personal project at that time. And just I continue what I do to experiment, to see, and.
It's a beautiful perspective, but it's a totally different perspective. I just was curious if it's always been with you.
I'm sure that I will understand. Is it okay, my answer?
No, no, I think so. I think she just wondered if you've been interested in perception for for a long time, and I think she just wondered if it was also when you were a child. So.
Yeah, but it's not only perception; it's also it's also conceptual. You know, it's also it's not. It's about different things. It's about sculpture also. There's many ideas I try to
which
put together.
Came together over your time of working as an artist. So, I think we're going to bring this to a close, and we'll be having
my initials.
Would you like?
Just my initials.
I just had one question. I find it really intriguing, your material investigations and like the underlying neurophysiology, but I can't help but think that the fundamental thing for me is a place to inhabit the sublime. That there is visual processes and there's like brain functioning, but if I find you make these sublime places and kind of beautiful experiences, and I wonder for you, like fundamentally, is that the kind of place that you're being drawn to, like in evoking a sublimity or something? I don't know if I said that correctly.
I think, one thing we haven't talked about, and I think that we may leave it, he was asking about the sublime, sublime. But one thing we haven't talked about is the political and the individual, which I think of with your work as well.
Yes, I'm interested. Many of my work are in a human scale, and they are ephemeral, and I really don't want to impose. I propose. It's more like a proposal for a moment.
And about letting an individual find himself or herself where he or she is, and having that kind of very individual experience that sometimes we are lucky enough to share with others as well. So. And Veronica, thank you so much.
Thank you, Catherine.
And invite all of you, please enjoy a drink and enjoy yourselves in the exhibition. Thanks.